devotional service from Jagannath Das Babaji. His practice was to live 6 months in Sri Navdeep Dham and 6 in Brajamandal. During his time, said Thakur Bhaktivinoda, Sri Jagannath Das Babaji was the most advanced Rasik Vaishnava in Gaura and Brajamandals and Purushottam Kshetra Jagannath Puri. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave him the title Sarvabhauma, the chief of the Vaishnavas. At 125 years old, his body appeared bent like a semicircle. His eyelids hung over his eyes like heavy stage curtains. Standing on either side, two disciples would lift his droopy eyelids so he could offer Tulsi Manjaris to his deity of Sri Giriraj Govardhan. Since Jagannath Das Babaji could barely walk, Bihari, his Brajavasi servant, used to carry him on his shoulders. But whenever there was a Nam Kirtan, Jagannath Das Babaji would bolt out of his basket and leap 4 feet into the air. In great ecstasy, he would begin to sing and dance. He performed vigorous bhajan despite physical limitations. He was fond of chanting loudly in both japa and kirtan. During kirtan, he would sing, Nitai ki naam eniche re, ki naam eniche re, ki naam diteche re. O Lord Nityanand, what a wonderful name you have brought. O Nitai, what a wonderful name you have given. After chanting almost the whole night, the next morning he would offer 1108 dandavats to the deities. He was always enthusiastic to serve the Vaishnavas. He lived as an ecstatic follower, following a strict diet and the yearly Chaturmasya, 12 months fast. The first month he ate only 4 bananas in the evening. Second month only guavas. Third month only whey. Fourth month only boiled banana flowers without salt. Once he begged a roti, flat bread, from a Vrindavan street sweeper. Hearing about this, the leading men of Vrindavan said to Jagannath Das Babaji, Baba, you are the crushed jewel of Braja. It pains us to hear anyone criticizing you. But now everyone is talking against you. We are saying Baba has gone mad. If he defies the age-old traditions, what will happen to society? Babaji Maharaj replied, you are all learned people. Don't you know the importance of the dust of Vrindavan? It is so surcharged with Krishna Prema that even Lord Brahma desires to become a particle of Raja Raja, dust of Vrindavan. Therefore, isn't the Vrindavan people who is constantly serving the dust, breathing it, rolling in it, and bathing in it more pure than anyone else? Silence filled the air, indicating everyone's acceptance of Babaji Maharaj's reply. While living in Navdeep Dham, Jagannath Das Babaji showed deep respect toward all residents. Even when some puppies ate from his plate, he did not protest. Bihari, his servant, became disgusted to see dogs devouring his Guru's prasadam and he drove them away. Jagannath Das Babaji scolded Bihari. These puppies are residents of the Holy Dham. They are not ordinary living entities. I will not eat until they come back to share the Mahaprasadam from my plate. At the age of 142, he could not see or walk. To confirm his findings, Thakur Bhaktivinoda requested Jagannath Das to see Lord Chaitanya's appearance place. Intoxicated with Gauranga Prem, Jagannath Das Babaji leapt high in the air and began chanting and dancing at the discovery of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Yoga Pita. Out of compassion for all the conditioned souls, Jagannath Das Babaji transferred his power of bhajan, knowledge of the Shastras, and Prema Bhakti directly into the heart of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, said Sripad B.V. Narayan Maharaj. Jagannath Das Babaji had many disciples. First, you must avoid women, men who associate with women, or with a man who in any way
राधाकांत प्रभु पता नहीं बात
He often gave the following instructions. First, you must avoid women.
कट गया रहने दीजिए.
He often gave the following instructions. First, you should avoid any way associate with a man who associates with a woman. Second, to realize the supreme goal of life, you must repeat Harinam regularly and steadfastly. Steadiness is so important that it must be maintained even at the cost of one's life. Third, never forget Gaura, who is more merciful and benevolent than Krishna. Krishna is like a just ruler who takes into account your offenses in his administration of justice. Gaura does not take your offenses into account. Whereas Krishna is more interested in the dispensation of justice, Gaura is more interested in the distribution of mercy. From this point of view, Gaur Kirtan is more useful than Krishna Kirtan. Gaur Kirtan means Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Fourth, Krishna is the avatar of Dwapar Yuga. Gaur is the Kali Yuga avatar. We should sing the name and glories of the avatar in whose age we live. Just as in the kingdom, we praise the ruling king. Jai Sachinandan Gaura Hari, Jai Sachinandan Gaura Hari. The Sonar Gauranga temple in Gopal Bagh, Vrindavan, houses Gaur Nitai deities once worshipped in Sri by Sri Jagannath Das Babaji. In Krishna Lila, he serves as Rasik Manjari. Reading from Sri Chaitanya's life and associates. Sri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. Gauravirbhav Bhumis Vam Nirdeshta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Sri Jagannathaya Te Namaha. I offer my obeisances to you, Jagannath, because you are the foremost Vaishnava of your era. You received the title Vaishnava Sarvabhaum. You are very dear to the Lord, and through your divine vision, you designated the place where Mahaprabhu appeared in this world. Jagannath Das' position in the disciplic succession. Throughout the world, any devotee who comes in the disciplic succession following Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur daily remembers Sri Jagannath Das Babaji and prays for his mercy. Vishwanath Bhakti Sakh Baladeva Jagannath Tara Priya Bhakti Vinod Mahabhagavat Var Shri Gaur Kishore Var Hari Bhajanete Jar Mod Shri Vashabhanavi Vara Sada Sevya Seva Para Tara Daita Das Mano. I offer respects to Vishwanath along with his devotees, to Baladev and to Jagannath, whose dear disciple is Bhakti Vinod. Shri Gaur Kishore Das, a great devotee whose great pleasure is the worship of the Lord. Radharani is the daughter of Rishabhanu and is always fixed in service to her Lord. I am the servant of him who is dear to her. There is also a Sanskrit version of the disciplic succession where Jagannath is mentioned in the following way. Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannatha Vibhustaka Shri Mayapur Dhamnastu Nirdeshta Sajjana Priya. Next in the line of Jagannath Prabhu, known as Vaishnava Sarvabhauma. Very dear to the saintly, he designated the Dham of Sri Mayapur. There are 4 dark ages in the history of Bengal Vaishnavism. First, preceding the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Second, following the disappearance of the 6 Goswamis. Third, after the disappearance of Srinivas Acharya, Narottam Das Thakur, Shyamanand and Rasikanand Dev Goswami. And fourth, following the disappearance of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Baladev Vidyabhushan. One should not think that the Madhva body of disciplic succession following in the spirit of Rupa Goswami has been disrupted on account of these periods of the arguments. Sometimes spiritual masters in the disciplic succession are individual performers of solitary bhajan, Viviktanandi, and sometimes they are preachers who delight in increasing the size of the congregation, Goshyanandi. To an untrained eye, it seems that one can measure the strength of an acharya by the number of disciples he makes, but this is not an appropriate criterion for judgment. Baladev Vidyabhushan's disciple was Uddhav Das or Uddhara Das. This Vaishnava had a disciple also named Uddhav Das, who gave the renounced order to Madhusudan Das. This Madhusudan Das was famed throughout the Vaishnava world as Siddha Madhusudan Das Babaji from Surya Kunda. Madhusudan Das gave the Paramhansa Vesha, Babaji initiation to Jagannath Das Babaji. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur wrote, all of these Vaishnavas adopted the lifestyle of the Paramhansas, preaching the path of pure devotion by their example. They are thus the objects of the greatest faith and reverence in the body of Vaishnava Sampradaya. From this statement of Srila Prabhupada, we learn that all these Bhajananandis not only practiced the anchorage life of solitary worship, but engaged in preaching activities as well, serving as acharyas. Jagannath Das' life in Vrindavan. Jagannath Das was born in a respectable family in Tangail district in what is today Bangladesh in around 1780 AD. According to some people, he was born into a family of Barendra Kayasthas in Taras village in Pabna district. The names of his parents are unknown. After taking the Paramahansa Vesh, Jagannath Das Babaji set an exemplary standard of intense bhajan in Navadip and Vrindavan, so much so that he was accepted by all the Bhajananandi Vaishnavas as their leader. He remained in this world for more than a century. While Jagannath Das was engaged in bhajan in Braja, a certain professional speaker on the Bhagavad from Katwa decided to move to Vrindavan to make his living, looking for gold and glory. Even though he gave excellent discourses on the Bhagavad, the renounced Vaishnavas showed no enthusiasm for them. When he inquired into the reasons that they were not coming to listen to him, Jagannath and the other Vaishnavas told him any discourse on the Bhagavad given by someone who has other goals in mind cannot be called a true explanation of the Bhagavad. His words can have no beneficial effect on anyone, not even himself. Indeed, such discourses have a negative effect on the consciousness of the listeners. The Vaishnavas, led by Jagannath Das, thus advised the professional speaker to give up the business of giving Bhagavad discourses as a means of making his living. By their grace, this money-minded Vaishnava was completely transformed and he gave up his false pride in learning and high birth. He became a great devotee with such humility that he paid prostrated obeisances to every creature residing in the holy Dham. Babaji Maharaj was himself a dedicated and intense Bhajananandi, but he did not believe that disciples who were unqualified and filled with material desires should be allowed to act in ways detrimental to service to Vishnu and the Vaishnavas on the pretext of engaging in the service of the holy name. He engaged less qualified disciples who had taken the renounced order in working the garden next to his cottage, so that he could offer vegetables to the deity and the Vaishnavas. If the senses are not engaged in the service of Vishnu and the Vaishnavas, one does not develop the qualifications necessary to chant properly, and it is impossible to experience the power of the holy name. When an individual engages the senses and sense objects in relation to the body and bodily relations, then attachment for these naturally arises. When we are fixed in the consciousness that our very self, including our body and senses, belong to the Lord, and we engage our senses in the service of the Lord and His devotees, then our feelings of love and possessiveness for Him increase. Jagannath Das meets Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Jagannath Das Babaji met Bhaktivinoda Thakur for the first time in 1880 AD. Their second meeting took place in the village of Amlajore in Burdwan district in 1891. On this occasion, they spent the entire night, it was Ekadashi, discussing Krishna Katha. Jagannath Das Babaji encouraged Bhaktivinoda Thakur to preach Gaura's name and abode. The Thakur gave the following account of this eventful night in his Sajan Toshani magazine. After spending the whole night in the Ekadashi vigil, people from the entire village gathered together at 8 in the morning to go on Nagar Sankirtan through its streets. With the Venerable Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj at the head of the group, they made their way to the Prapanna Ashram. It is impossible to describe Babaji Maharaj's ecstatic transformations during this kirtan. Though he is over 100 years old, he dances like a lion, sometimes singing out the couplet. Nitai ki naam ene chele, naam ene che naam le hate, Shraddhan mune naam dite chele. What divine name is this that Nitai has brought? He has brought the name to the marketplace and is selling it for the price of faith. As Babaji Maharaj sang, he cried and fell to the ground in ecstasy. I then saw something transpire which I had never seen before. All present were affected by his mood. Their eyes filled with tears and their hair stood on end. And even though they could barely sing, they remained absorbed in the kirtan and danced wildly. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has also written about Jagannath Das Babaji in his autobiography. In 1892, Jagannath Das Babaji and many other Vaishnavas participated in the Sankirtan festival in Godrum and then in Sri Mayapur. In the month of Magh in 1299, Bengali, Babaji Maharaj came from Puja Navadvip with his associates to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's residence Surabhi Kunj in Godram Dweep. A great Sankirtan festival was held there on Wednesday, the 27th of March. Babaji Maharaj designates Mahaprabhu's birth site. A physically powerful Brajavasi named Bihari Das Babaji was Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj's personal servant. He used to place Babaji Maharaj in a large wicker basket and carry him from place to place. Even though Babaji Maharaj was very aged, his sight was still good. His eyelids drooped, however, covering his eyes, and he had to lift them in order to see. It is said that Bihari Das Ji carried Babaji Maharaj in the wicker basket as far as the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Upon arrival, Babaji Maharaj got out of the basket and began to dance madly, singing the names Jai Sachinandan Gaur Hari. Everyone was amazed to see the old Babaji dance in this way. Through his divine vision, Babaji Maharaj pointed out the site of Mahaprabhu's birth and then later the site where the Qazi broke the Mridanga. This place is now known as Kola Bhanga Danga and is of course the site where Mahaprabhu had his all-night kirtanas Srivas Angan. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur described these events in Sajjan Goshani as follows. At 11 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, the 20th of Falgun, 1299 of the Bengali era, 1892 AD, devotees filled 3 boats on the west bank of the Ganges in Navadvip town. The great devotee Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj was carried in a palanquin. By the time the party reached Mayapur, it was impossible to count the number of people who had gathered.
कितने बजे बुलाया टाइम नहीं दिया
Dwarka Babu and the party of devotees carrying colorful flags were waiting for the renounced Vaishnavas with a joyous kirtan at Mahaprabhu's Janmasthana. When all these devotees had gathered in the raised area where Mahaprabhu appeared and started to dance, it was such a wondrous sight as had likely not been seen in Navadvip Dham for nearly 400 years. Later, the devotees sat down and, after discussing the matter, decided that deity service should be established both at the birthplace and at Srivas Angan. Jagannath Das Babaji Mahasaya proposed that Jagannath and Sati Devi should be worshipped in one building and Mahaprabhu with Lakshmi Devi and Vishnu Priya standing on his either side in another. On the other hand, deities of the Panchatattva should be consecrated in Srivas Angan. In those days, there was a large kadamba tree at the Mayapur Janmasthana. Babaji Maharaj came and danced under this tree. Sri Gaur Kishodas Babaji also used to sit under that tree, chanting the holy name in deep trance. Jagannath Das Babaji spent the last years of his life in a cottage in Kola Dweep named Bhajan Kutir. This is where Babaji Maharaj's Samadhi tomb is now situated. As a service to Jagannath Das, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur had a concrete veranda built for this cottage. Babaji Maharaj in Calcutta. Babaji Maharaj also came to visit Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his house, Bhakti Bhavan in Ram Bagan in Calcutta. There he also met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur, upon whom he showered unlimited affection. When he learned that Saraswati Thakur was an expert in astrology, he asked him to make an almanac based on the Vaishnava calendar. Later, the Chaitanya Math began publishing the Navadvip Panjika in accordance with Babaji Maharaj's wishes. Though Babaji Maharaj would not allow anyone to take his photograph, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was able to arrange to have one taken when he came to visit Bhakti Bhavan. This photo is familiar to all disciples of the Gaudiya Mathas as it appears on their altars. Chandan. अच्छा वाला कोई वही This photo is familiar to all the disciples of the Gaudiya Manthas as it appears on their altars. It shows Babaji Maharaj sitting on a wooden seat with his worshipable Girdhari deity on his chest. If Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur had not gone to this trouble, we would be eternally deprived of knowing what Jagannath Das Babaji looked like. Babaji Maharaj deeply loved Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We have heard that he later gave his Girdhari to Bhaktivinoda and that this deity is still being served in Bhakti Bhavan. Babaji Maharaj's disappearance. When approaching the end of his sojourn in this world, Babaji Maharaj became hunched and tiny looking. Nevertheless, he would still dance in Kirtan. And when he did, he stretched to his full height of 6 feet. When absorbed in the ecstatic mood of Kirtan, he would sometimes jump 5 or 6 feet into the air. With his tall figure and long arms, he made people think of Mahaprabhu. Jagannath Das' disappearance took place on the Shukla Pratipal of the month of Falguna, Monday, February 25, 1895. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote of it in Sajjan Toshni. At 10 o'clock in the morning, in the Bhajan Kutir in Goladweep in Navdeep town, the old general of the Vaishnavas went to his eternal abode. Siddha Babaji Mahasaya went to the spiritual world, leaving this world in darkness. Our mundane eyes will no longer be able to behold his ecstatic dancing in Kirtan. May he bestow his blessings on us from his place in the eternal abode. Raj Bihari Goswami of Purunia in Burdwan district was Jagannath Das's initiated disciple. Raj Bihari Goswami in turn initiated the independent king of Tripura, Raja Ishan Chandra Mandike Bahadur. Raj Bihari Goswami's deity, Raj Bihari Jiu, is worshipped to this day in the Raja's palace. Jagannath Das and the Babaji community. His Holiness Bhakti Pramod Puri Goswami, the chairman of the editorial board of Chaitanya Vani magazine, wrote an article summarizing some of the important contributions made by Vaishnava Sarvabhaum Jagannath Das Babaji. This article was published in the book Sri Saraswati Jayashri, published by the Bagh Bazar Gaudiya Math in 1948. On September 28, 1922, after the Calcutta Gaudiya Math's annual festival, Srila Prabhupada travelled to Vrindavan, where he arrived on Saturday, September 30. Through the efforts of Dr. Balhari Das, he and his disciples stayed at the Ghosh family residence near the Lala Babu temple. On October 3, Srila Prabhupada went for darshan of Rupa Goswami's beloved deities Radha and Govinda. He and his disciples went to look at a few places, seeking a site to establish a matha in Vrindavan. On hearing of Prabhupada's arrival, Madhusudan Goswami Sarvabhaum came from Radharaman Ghera to visit him. They discussed scriptural matters for 2 hours. And Prabhupada presented him with the latest copy and a few back issues of Gaudiya magazine. Madhusudan Goswami was very pleased with the high caliber of discussion found in Gaudiya and stated that one day it would be the guiding publication for all Gaudiya Vaishnavas. On October 4, Srila Prabhupada visited the Madan Mohan temple of Sanatana Goswami. On his way back, he visited the famous Pandit Ramakrishna Das Babaji in Madan Mohan Park, a walled garden near the Radha Vallabh temple. In the discussion that followed, Pandit Babaji claimed that the chanting of the holy name is on the same level as any other devotional activity, and that all the various songs, even those that contradict the Goswami's teachings, are equivalent to the Mahamantra. He also stated that unless one was educated in the study of logic or Nyaya, one could not be qualified for the study of Vedanta. He also argued that it was unnecessary to discuss mundane and spiritual matters. Srila Prabhupada replied in accordance with the teachings of the Goswamis as furthered by Vishwanath Chaturthi Thakur, Baladev, Jagannath Das and Gaur Kishodas Babaji. He said, the Goswamis have taught that the chanting of the holy names is the primary devotional practice as well as being the goal of all such practice. Divine remembrance of the Lord and His pastimes comes naturally to one who is engaged in such chanting. high-level discussions of spiritual truth characterized both Mahaprabhu and his followers, the Goswamis. If one does not have an acute sense of discrimination between the spiritual and mundane, then one equates the debauchery of the Sahajiyas with devotional activity. This is the royal road to self and mass deception. Siddha Jagannath Das Babaji's teachings were in line with those of Rupa Goswami. He would in no way embrace any snappy jingles that made a confusion of the divine sentiments. Offenses to the holy name can in no way be equated with the pure name. The scriptures talk of the positive effects of chanting either with faith or without it, but this is not at all the same as chanting without giving up the 10 offenses. It is self-deception to think that you can allow yourself to commit any one of the 10 offenses knowingly or unknowingly and still chant the holy names effectively. The Vishnu Vaishnava Raj Sabha. According to Saraswati Jayashri, it was Jagannath Das Babaji who identified the Shukla Panchami of the month of Magh, also known as Sri Panchami, as the birthday of Vishnu Priya Devi, the wife of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He told this to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and from him the custom was established throughout the Vaishnava world so that everyone honors Vishnu Priya Devi on this day. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur chose Vishnu Priya Devi's appearance day to reinstitute the Vishnu Vaishnava Raj Sabha or World Vaishnava Association. This was done in the midst of a kirtan on Feb 5, 1919 at the Ulta Danga, but also known as the Bhaktivinoda Asam. The following article appeared in the Amrit Bazar Patrika, a Calcutta English language daily, on the following day, the 10th of February. On Wednesday last was celebrated with great eclat the Advent ceremony of Sri Sri Vishnu Priya Devi at the same Asan, 1 Ulta Danga Junction Road. The occasion was solemnized by the reinstitution of Sri Vishnu Vaishnava Raj Sabha, as inaugurated by no less a personage than Sri Jiva Goswami himself, 11 years after the passing of Sri Mahaprabhu, and as given fresh impetus by Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur 33 years ago. Sri Prabhupada gave an explanation of the history of the Vishnu Vaishnava Raj Sabha, which was published in the Sajjan Toshni. Vishnu calendar se padhte Maharaj. Reading from Vishnu calendar. Sri Jagannath Das Babaji disappearance. Sri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj was respected by all the Vaishnava community and was thus known as Vaishnava Sarvabhaum, or chief amongst the Vaishnavas. There are some nice stories connecting him with the finding of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's birthplace recorded in Sri Navdeep Dham Mahatmya. Sri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj was born around the year 1800 AD. He spent many years in Vrindavan, where he became famous as a perfect devotee, though more than this is not known of his early years and pastimes. What we do know, however, is that he was particularly enthusiastic in serving the Lord's devotees and performing kirtan. In later life, his servant Bihari Lal used to carry him on his shoulders in a basket, though when he would hear a kirtan or himself be engaged in kirtan, his body would extend itself out of the basket like a beautiful banyan tree, and he would loudly shout, Nitai ki naam inachere, Nitai ki naam dichere. O Lord Nityanand, what a wonderful name you have brought. O Nitai, what a wonderful name you have given. The stories which I will now relate are at the time when he was more than 120 years old. Living in a tent at Navadip with Bihari Lal, his servant, he would eat prasadam from a large brass plate which someone had given as a donation. A litter of puppies which had taken birth nearby began to come and eat off Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj's plate, but he did not object. After a few days, however, Bihari Lal saw what was happening, and disgusted to see the dogs eat from his guru's plate, he drove them away. Jagannath Das Babaji chastised Bihari Lal and angrily saying, if the dogs can't eat, I won't eat. His servant had to search out and bring back the puppies, and as they joined Babaji Maharaj again over his plate, he exclaimed, all glories to the Dhamma's dogs. Thus, he always displayed his great respect for all the residents of the holy Dham. On another occasion, he had his servant purchase 200 rupees worth of rasgullas and instructed him, feed them to all the Dham's cows, but don't give one to those rascal Sahajiya Babajis, pretenders. Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj was such a great devotee that the famous Bhaktivinoda Thakur Kedarnath Dutt called him the commanding chief of the devotees. When Srila Bhaktivinoda was looking for the actual place where Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's birthplace was, he asked Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj to go with him. During the many changes in the course of flow of the mighty Ganges river, some parts of the sacred Dham of Navadvip, 9 islands, had changed. The Ganges had revealed old and lost places and reclaimed new ones. To his surprise, Bhaktivinoda Thakur discovered that the modern day city called Navadvipa was not more than 100 years old and therefore wasn't the Navadvip of Sri Chaitanya. Some said the birth site was on a place now in the Ganges, while some said it was in the city of Navadvipa. Dissatisfied, Bhaktivinoda pushed on looking. He found some antique terrain maps and government records and authentic books written at the time of Lord Chaitanya, all of which agreed that Mayapur Navadvip Dham is situated on the east bank of the Ganges. To Bhaktivinoda's amazement, he found several large mounds covered with sacred tulsi plants on land owned by Mohammedans. It was shrouded with local rumors of strange lights and sounds, so the owner, believing it to be haunted, would not go there. Many old Babajis of the time, however, believed this to be the actual birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Convinced it was true, Bhaktivinoda, inspired by Jagannath Das Babaji, went there to the spot with Jagannath Das Babaji being carried in his basket. Due to his old age, Sri Jagannath Das Babaji could not open his eyes but had to forcibly open them with his fingers, but to speak of walk. If he went anywhere, he was carried in his basket by Bihari Lal. But upon arriving at the transcendental site, he leaped out of the basket and danced in ecstasy, shouting Haribol and Gauranga, definitely establishing it to be the very same birthplace of Lord Chaitanya. Gauravirbhav Bhumeshwar Nirdeshta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannathaya Te Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Shri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, who is respected by the entire Vaishnava community and who discovered the place where Lord Chaitanya appeared. Shri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj had a disciple named Bhagavad Das Babaji Maharaj, and Gaur Kishore Das Babaji was his disciple. However, at this time, there was another great exponent of Vaishnava teachings that, on passing, we have already mentioned. His name is Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and so the line again divides like this. Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, Bhagavad Das Babaji, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji. So it's completed.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
You speak to the grandmother.
Elaborate. Should I bring another book, Maharaj?
Yeah.
Which book? Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam should I bring?
नहीं पड़ा हो रहा है तो अभी जूस करना अभी जूस करना आपको जूस
क्या बोला नहीं बोला
दिल्ली में राधाकांत को वो मिलने के लिए आज राधाकांत को आज ही महाराज दिल्ली में ही है, हाँ कोई दिक्कत नहीं। ठीक है। Hare Krishna.
Does it help you? The amount of guidance it gives. Another thing is that how many times do you need to wake up in the night?
पानी ले जाओ। एक मिनट।
And it comes from the cycling.
साइकिलिंग वो आगे कर रहे हैं क्यों करते हैं हमारे थोड़ा सा वो तो ये साइकिल तो हो गई हाँ पता नहीं हमारे आप लोग भी चलाते हैं वहाँ जब देखा हुआ ना यहाँ तो ये इसमें बैठ भी सकते हैं पीछे सीट है हम बहुत सोच समझ के लाए थे अरे
On the pastimes, the teachings of the great Vaishnavas. And usually, we try to recall a wonderful pastime. By hearing about the pastimes of the great sages, we also get purified. Today, the greatest day of Jagannath Babaji. Jagannath Babaji was a very elevated soul. We can chant his pranamanta. Guru Baba Bhume Swam Nidesha Sadhana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Shri Jagannathaya Te Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Shri Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, who is respected by the entire Vaishnava community and who discovered the place where Lord Chaitanya appeared. So, Jagannath Babaji appeared around 1880 and he appeared in Bengal and he was a disciple of Madhusudan Das Babaji. And Jagannath Babaji was a very, very elevated soul. He was absorbed in chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And he would spend 6 months in Vrindavan, 6 months in Navadip. He was considered considered to be a authority on the scriptures. And Thakur Bhaktivinoda gave him the title of Sarvabhauma. So Jagannath Babaji was a very elevated soul. And Jagannath Babaji, he lived on the planet till he was 144 years of age. Jagannath Babaji would study the scriptures along with Thakur Bhaktivinoda. And he had great respect for anyone born in the Dham. Jagannath Babaji was very simple Vrindavan and in Navadvip. Vrindavan Jagannath Babaji did not make any difference. He did not discriminate amongst anyone. And Jagannath Babaji paid great respect to even the animals who lived in the town. Once Jagannath Babaji requested that one of the Brajbasi householders give him chapati, and he was criticized. Why such an elevated soul asking for chapati? He said, everything in the town is very significant. And Jagannath Babaji had great respect even for the animals that lived in the town. There was a puppy dog with 5 children who was living next to Jagannath Babaji's house. And Jagannath Babaji would regularly, he would be eating with all these puppies. And these puppies would come and eat on the same plate that Jagannath Babaji was eating. So the devotee said, you are such an elevated soul, and people are thinking you have gone mad. You are inviting the puppies to eat with you. Once Bihari was a servant of Jagannath Babaji. But Bihari took the puppies away and said, no, you can't eat over there. And when Jagannath Babaji came to eat Prasad, he saw the puppies were not there. So he says, I'm not going to eat. And the puppies are also not. And then the puppies ate from the same plate as Jagannath Babaji. And Jagannath Babaji was explaining, these puppies are so fortunate because they are living in the town. And even the puppies are living in the town. And in the town, everything is artificial. Even the dust from the feet is very artificial. Jagannath Babaji showed us how we should. So I did so Jagannath Babaji was very respectful to even the animals who live in the town. Jagannath Babaji, the age of 140, he lived on the planet till he was 144 years of age. His body began to bend, and his eyes, the eyes would always be closing. So they had 2 servants with him all the time. They would open the eyes and then we would water through the lips. So Jagannath Babaji was very elevated Vaishnava. Thakur Bhakti took Shiksha from him. Our Sampradaya is Shiksha Sampradaya. And Bhakti Thakur took instructions and Shiksha from Jagannath Babaji. Jagannath, somebody gave Jagannath Babaji 1 rupee, and Jagannath Babaji took it, and he was being carried by Bihari. And he said, take me back to that person. And he was taken back, and Jagannath Babaji gave us 1 rupee back. He said, I don't know how you carry the burden of so much money, but I can't even take 1 rupee from you. showing that everything belongs to Krishna. And I didn't see it as a very simple lifestyle. Jagannath Babaji has about 200 rupees saved. His servant Bihari put all the donations in a bag. So once Jagannath Babaji told him, "How much money do you have?" He said, "200." So Jagannath Babaji said, "Buy rasgullas from this and feed all the cows." And Jagannath Babaji's servant said, "The cows? Why don't you use this money to give rasgullas to the sadhus?" And Jagannath Babaji said, "These are not sadhus. They're not real sadhus." And he said, "Buy rasgullas and give it to the cows." But Thakur Bhakti Vinod, was a very great Vaishnava. He described to be the spiritual energy of Lord Chaitanya. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod was working for the British government, and he was not satisfied with what was being presented as the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod would go to different places, study the maps. He was trying to identify the real place where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu moved in. And one day when Thakur Bhakti Vinod was in his balcony, he saw light. When he went in that direction, he did a lot of research. There were many Tulsi products there. And Thakur Bhakti Vinod concluded, this is the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is the actual birthplace of Thakur Bhakti Vinod, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But Jagannath Thakur Bhakti Vinod wanted this to be confirmed. So Jagannath Babaji, as we told you, at an age of 120, his body bent, and he would be carried in a basket by his servant Bihari and some number two servants. But whenever they would enter a kirtan program of Jagannath Babaji, would jump out of his basket and take part in the kirtan. Otherwise he could not even walk, was being carried by assistants. But when he would be taken to a program where kirtan was being done, he jumped up and he would start dancing. So, Thakur Bhakti Vinod was convinced that this is the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he wanted this to be confirmed by Jagannath Babaji. So Thakur Bhakti Vinod arranged for Jagannath Babaji to come to the location to confirm whether this is a true place. And the moment Jagannath Babaji came to that site, he jumped up 4 to 8 feet and said, this is it, this is it, this is it. This is the place where Lord Chaitanya appeared. So once Jagannath Babaji confirmed the birthplace, Thakur Bhakti Vinod was convinced this is the hidden place. Jagannath Babaji used to say that we should chant the mantra of the avatar of this age, and he propagated chanting of the Hare Krishna. And among his teachings, Jagannath Babaji, he said, if we want to make spiritual advancement, we should avoid the association of those who are addicted to sense enjoyment. Satsanga Tyaga, Chaitanya said, in order to make spiritual advancement, we should renounce the association with the other people. Association plays a big role in our development of spiritual life. So, on the one hand, Chaitanya said, and we did it, sadhu sangha, Ramamata sadhu sangha, so it is. Associate with those who are convinced about the values of spiritual life. And satsanga tyaga vaishnava. Avoid the association of those who are attracted to sense enjoyment and female. So, Thakur Bhakti knows was a very great acharya, and he used whatever donation he got, this was to it. We can on this auspicious day of our respects to Thakur Bhakti to Jagannath Bhakti, and pray to him that we will also be blessed with spiritual strength. Thakur Jagannath Bhakti said, in Kali Yuga, you chant the names of the avatars of this age. And Jagannath Babaji was considered to be the leading acharya of his time. And Thakur Bhakti Vinod, who took him as a scripture. Today this is a prayer stating Jagannath Babaji. We should pray to him for his mercy so that we can make spiritual advancement. Jagannath Babaji Maharaj ki. Today is also the birthday of Rasikananda Prabhu. Rasikananda Prabhu, we ended him for one more point. We may have seen that we have a Vaishnava calendar in which we have the appearance day and the disappearance day of all the great acharyas. So that original idea to have a Vaishnava calendar with this information was given by Jagannath Babaji to Bhaktisiddhanta. And so Jagannath Babaji wanted a Vaishnava calendar, and so he instructed Bhaktisiddhanta to do the Vaishnava calendar. And Jagannath Babaji also identified many of the places in Navadip Dham where Lord Chaitanya performed his pastime. Now when we go to Navadip Dham Parikram, you know beforehand this pastime was performed here, this was performed there. Just like when you go to Rajmanal Parikram, you already have information on a different location. That was done by the efforts of the Goswami of Vrindavan. And Jagannath Babaji identified many of the places where Lord Chaitanya had displayed his pastime, and it was his inspiration and guidance that the calendar was developed. Jagannath Babaji ki. So Rasikananda Prabhu was a spiritual name, and he was a son of a king. Many Vaishnava sages were sons of kings. Even Narottam Thakur was the son of a king. So Rasikananda Prabhu appeared as the son of a king, and he was a good Gaudiya Vaishnava's scholar and the most beloved disciple of Shyamananda Prabhu. And Asikananda became the head Pujari and he worshipped the Guru's deity Govinda. Once Asikananda Prabhu was walking and the elephants came to attack him. And he caught the elephant and told him to chant Hare Krishna mantra. And the elephant started chanting Hare Krishna. It was really bad. So, it is the day of Asikananda Prabhu Ki. We'll take a voice from the Bhagavatam. This is Canto 5, Chapter 18, Text 4. We have limited time. More we're going to do.